I never thought my life would turn into a damn soap opera, but here I am, sitting on my couch, staring at a phone full of messages that blew my world apart. It started as a normal day. My grandparents' funeral was supposed to be a somber event, a quiet moment to remember and mourn. Instead, it became the day I uncovered everything I never wanted to see. My wife, Sarah, was acting strange that day. She was unusually distant during the service. I caught her sneaking glances at her phone, her fingers trembling slightly. I brushed it off, assuming she was upset or maybe overwhelmed. But later that evening, I decided to check her messages. Just for a quick glance, I told myself, no big deal. What I found made my stomach drop. There were text exchanges between her and my brother, Jake. Not just casual chatting, dirty, intimate messages. They were talking about how they couldn't wait to see each other again, about sneaking around behind my back. My brother, my own flesh and blood, sneaking around with my wife. It was like a punch to the gut, a sick punch that made my vision blur. I scrolled through more messages and my hands went cold. There were photos, her with her hair down, smirking at the camera, and pictures of her in bed with him. I couldn't believe it. My mind was racing, trying to process how long this had been going on, how many times they'd lied to me, smiled at me like everything was normal. My heart hammered in my chest as I looked around the room, feeling like I was in someone else's nightmare. The tiny details hit me hard. Her lipstick smudged on the pillow, a faint scent of her perfume lingering on the screen. And just like that, the biggest betrayal of my life was staring me right in the face. I wanted to scream, but I only managed a hollow, shaking breath. The room felt too small, too hot. My palms were clammy. I could feel my jaw tightening as anger bubbled up. I didn't know how long I sat there, staring at those messages, but I knew I'd never look at her the same way again. I had to keep calm, even though every nerve in my body was screaming. I needed to think. How do you confront someone who's been lying to your face for years? How do you even start processing that your brother, your own family, did this to you? I clenched my fists, trying to control the rage that threatened to explode. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had proof, undeniable proof, that everything I believed in was a lie. And that's when the real question hit me. What do I do next? How do I confront her, or do I just walk away? My mind was a tornado of questions, but one thing was clear. I wouldn't let this go, not without a fight. And that's when I started planning. They thought they had everyone fooled, but I wasn't going to let them get away with it. No, I was going to make sure the truth came out on my terms. Because if they wanted secrets, I'd give them plenty. And if I had to burn everything down to get justice, so be it. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The room was silent except for my ragged breathing. Outside, the wind howled softly, as if signaling the storm I was about to unleash. I knew from this moment on everything would change, and I'd be the one to make sure it did. Want the next part? After I finished scrolling through those messages, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut again, only this time it was 1,000 times worse. My stomach was in knots, a lead weight pressing down, and my palms were slick with sweat. I couldn't believe the betrayal, not just from Sarah, but from Jake too. My own brother, sharing intimate secrets with my wife behind my back like I was nothing. I sat there for a few minutes, trying to breathe through the fury that was boiling inside me. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I knew that wouldn't help. Instead, I decided I needed a plan, a way to confront them both, but also a way to get some revenge. I wasn't some naive fool. I knew people like this. They always thought they were smarter than you. They thought they could keep secrets forever. Well, not anymore. The first thing I did was gather all the physical evidence I had. I printed out the messages, saved the photos, and made copies of every piece of proof I could find. I wanted to be able to show them face to face that I wasn't going to be played for a fool. I also took screenshots of their conversations on my phone, just in case, because I wasn't trusting anyone anymore. Next, I thought about how to hit back, not with violence or anything reckless, but with something that would make them realize I wasn't going to stay quiet. I spent the night researching, reading about other stories of betrayal and revenge. I wanted something clever, something they wouldn't expect. That's when I hit on it. I'd fake a reconciliation, lure Sarah into thinking she was still in control while secretly turning the tables on her. I knew her pattern. She loved control, loved feeling like she had all the power, so I decided I'd give her that. I'd act like I was ready to forgive, to move on. But behind the scenes, I'd be gathering more proof, setting the stage for her downfall. I planned to expose everything at the right moment in front of everyone. No messy confrontations, no yelling matches, just a clean, calculated reveal. I started crafting a story in my head about how I would approach her. I'd pretend I was giving her another chance. Say I wanted to understand, to see if she'd be honest. Meanwhile, I'd be recording her reactions, getting her to slip up. I also bought a little voice recorder, hidden in my pocket, to catch her when she thought she was in the clear. That night, I barely slept. Sleep was impossible with my mind racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that smirk she wore when she thought she was getting away with everything. I could feel my fists clenching uncontrollably. I hated her, hated Jake, hated that my family had let me walk around blind for so long. I wanted her to pay, not just for the affair, but for the years of lies, the betrayal, the way she made me feel like I was crazy for doubting her. Before I went to bed, I made a simple decision. I wouldn't let her get away with it. Not this time. I'd be the one to call the shots. I would expose her, and I'd do it in a way she couldn't wiggle out of. But first I needed to wait, to let her think she still had the upper hand. That's when the real game would start. As dawn crept in, I felt a strange mix of cold calm and raging fire. I knew once I walked out that door, everything would change. The question was, how much damage would I do before it all ended? Or maybe, how much would I have to sacrifice to get the justice I deserved? The answer wasn't clear yet, but one thing was sure: I wouldn't walk away from this without some kind of payback. Want the next part? The day I decided to confront Sarah, I felt like I was walking into a minefield. My stomach was twisted in knots, and every step I took was heavy with the weight of what I was about to do. I kept telling myself I was calm, collected, but inside, my mind was racing 1,000 miles per hour. I had my plan, my evidence, everything laid out like a game of chess. Now, I just had to execute it without losing my nerve. I waited until she was alone in the house, which usually meant she was in the kitchen pretending to be busy but really just avoiding me. That's where I found her stirring coffee, eyes distant like she knew I'd find out sooner or later. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold sweat on my palms. "Hey, Sarah," I said softly, trying to keep my voice even. "Can we talk just for a minute?" She looked up, her eyes widening just slightly, like she knew this wasn't going to be a friendly chat. "Sure," she replied, her voice trembling subtly. I took out the folder I'd prepared, placing it on the table between us. "I found something," I said, voice rough but controlled. "Something I really wish I hadn't seen, but I can't ignore it anymore." I slid the printed messages across the table toward her. "Care to explain this?" Her face went pale. She stared at the papers, her fingers trembling as she tried to snatch them away. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. But I could see her eyes darting, guilty as hell. "Oh, come on, Sarah. Don't insult my intelligence," I said, voice rising just enough to make her flinch. "This isn't some misunderstanding. This is you and Jake, right? You've been sneaking around behind my back all this time." I leaned in, feeling the adrenaline surge through me. "How long has this been going on? A month? A year? Do you even care how much this hurts? Or do you just think you're untouchable?" She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. I didn't mean for you to find out like this," she whispered, tears welling up. "It was a mistake." "Save it," I cut her off. "You lied to me every day, Sarah, every damn day. And Jake, I can't believe my own brother did this to me." My voice cracked. "I want answers straight from the horse's mouth. Did you ever think about me? About how this would destroy everything?" She looked down, tears streaming down her face now. The sight of her so broken made something inside me twist, part rage, part heartbreak. But I was determined to stay in control. I took the recording device from my pocket and turned it on. "Tell me the truth, because I've got your words now, and I'm recording everything." The confession came slow and quiet. "It was a mistake. I didn't think it would get this far. I swear I never meant to hurt you." Her voice betrayed her, trembling with guilt. "Yeah, well, you did," I said coldly. "And now I'm done. I want you out of my life, permanently." I felt the heaviness settle over me like a shroud. I knew this was only the beginning. As I stood up, I saw tears in her eyes, but I didn't feel anything but a numb emptiness. I walked out of that house feeling like I had just stepped through a fire, burned but finally free. I had the proof, the confession, and a clear plan to make her regret every lie. In that moment, I realized I'd be better off without her. But I also knew I'd need to be smart if I wanted to make her pay. I couldn't just storm in and blow everything up. I had to be strategic. That's when I decided to wait a few days, let her stew in her guilt, then execute my plan. Because revenge, I learned, was always better served cold. Next, I'll tell you how I finally pulled the trigger and what came after. Want the next part? A few days passed, and honestly, it felt like I was living in a fog. Every moment I wasn't thinking about what I'd done or what I was planning. I was replaying her face when she realized I knew everything. That quiet, defeated stare. It haunted me in every quiet moment and fueled my resolve. I knew I couldn't just confront her again and hope she'd come clean. I had to escalate, make her see I was serious about making her pay. I spent those days quietly gathering more intel. I remembered that she kept her phone on her nightstand, even when she tried to act normal around me. I covertly installed a keylogger on her device, nothing fancy, just enough to record her messages or calls without her knowing. I knew this was a step into dangerous territory, but I was past caring. I wanted her to understand that I had eyes everywhere now. While that was happening, I also set up a little plan for the showdown. I told her I decided to give her one last chance, that I was willing to forgive if she came clean voluntarily. Of course, I knew she never would, but I wanted her to think she still had some control. That's when I planned to confront her again, but with everything I'd collected in the background. On the day I decided to do it, I prepared myself. I bought a bottle of her favorite wine, set the scene in the living room, and even bought some snacks. I wanted her to feel like she was in a safe space, that I was willing to listen. But inside, I was ready to lay everything on the table. I had the recordings, the photos, the messages. I was about to strip away all her lies piece by piece. When she walked into the room, I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She knew I was different. She knew I wasn't just going to roll over anymore. I looked her in the eyes, kept my voice steady. Sarah, I've given you days to think, to decide if you want to come clean, and I've got proof more than enough to end this whole mess. I paused, watching her flinch. So tell me, what's the truth? She hesitated, tears pooling again. I don't know what you want me to say, she whispered. I was weak. I made a terrible mistake. I didn't want to hurt you, I swear. But I had her on tape, her own words, her own admissions. I pressed a button on my phone and the audio played loudly in the room. Her voice, admitting everything she tried to deny. Her face went deathly pale. She looked like she wanted to crawl out of her skin. Her hands shook uncontrollably. I never wanted you to find out like this, she managed. Please just forgive me, I'll do anything. That was the moment I decided to cut her off. I told her I was done with her lies. I told her I'd be exposing her not just to me but to everyone. Her family, our friends, everyone who thought she was perfect, because she was. She was a cheat, a liar, a thief of trust. I pulled out a folder of printed evidence, slapped it on the table. This is your real story, Sarah, not the one you've been telling everyone. I'm done pretending you're innocent. I want you out today, and I want you to understand I'm not coming back from this, ever. She looked broken, defeated, but I knew I had to follow through. I told her I was going to call her parents, my family, and tell them everything. I was going to send the evidence to everyone. I wanted her to feel how deep her betrayal ran. That's when I handed her a set of keys to her car, her clothes, everything she'd need to leave. Get out. And don't come back, I said coldly. Because once I'm done, you'll never have that control over me again. She didn't say a word, just packed her purse, tears streaming down her face, and left without a word. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd finally done what I needed to do. That night, I knew I'd crossed a line, but I also knew I'd taken back my life. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. The truth was out there now, and she was gone. The house felt lighter, colder somehow, but finally mine again. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, waiting for the fallout to start. Next, I'll tell you what happened afterward and how I managed to rebuild or not. Would you like the next part? The days after she left felt surreal. The house was unnervingly quiet, like a ghost town. I kept expecting her to walk back through the door to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but she never did. Instead, the fallout hit quickly and hard. Her family, my family, everyone I thought I knew suddenly became strangers. I made the calls first. I told her parents everything, played the recordings I'd kept, showed them the messages. They were stunned, silent for a long moment before her mother finally whispered, "How could she do this? To all of us, to you." I didn't reply right away. My throat was dry, my stomach clenched. I just said I needed time. I needed to make sure everyone knew the truth. The reaction from my own family was worse than I expected. Some of them believed her, tried to dismiss what I had as some angry outburst. Others looked at me like I was the crazy one, the one who couldn't see what was right in front of him. It made me realize how deep the betrayal went, not just from Sarah and Jake, but from the people I thought I could trust. But I didn't care about their denial. I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to back it up. I started sharing the messages with friends, with anyone willing to listen. I wanted everyone to see her for what she really was. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, turned out to be a liar and a cheat. I felt a mix of relief and rage every time I thought about how I'd been played. Meanwhile, Jake stayed silent. I didn't reach out to him directly. I knew I'd only get more lies or avoidance. Instead, I let the evidence speak for itself. I knew I'd have to face him eventually, but I wasn't in a rush. I wanted to see how far this would go, how much everyone would turn against her once the truth was out. As for Sarah, she stayed silent too. I'd sent her a final message telling her I never wanted to see her again, that she'd burned every bridge. I knew she was probably devastated, but honestly, I didn't care. She chose her path, and now she had to live with the consequences. I also kept the recordings, the photos, all the proof I needed in a safe place, just in case she or her family tried to deny or manipulate the truth later. The most unexpected part came when I started healing. Slowly, the fog lifted. I realized I'd been living in a nightmare, but I was still standing. I had a choice: let this ruin me or use it as a wake-up call. I decided I'd rebuild not just my house or my bank account, but my sense of self. I cut ties with everyone who defended her or tried to minimize what she did. I blocked her number, cut out the toxic people from my life, and focused on myself. The hardest thing, honestly, was learning to trust again. But I also knew I had to protect myself from future betrayals. I started therapy, worked on my boundaries, and made a vow to never be blind to red flags again. I'd been naive, yes, but I'd also been betrayed in the worst way possible. That lesson hurt, but it made me stronger. Looking back, I realized I did what I had to do. I exposed her, I walked away, and I refused to be a victim. Revenge, I learned, isn't about hurting someone else, it's about reclaiming your power. Sitting here now, I know I'll never forget what happened, but I also know I'm better for it. I finally took control of my life, and I'll never let anyone take that away from me again. Would you like me to finish with the final part? The days turned into weeks, and slowly the weight inside me eased. I wasn't the same person I was before. No one who's been betrayed like this could be. But I was stronger, more aware. The betrayal had cut deep, but in its wake I found clarity I never had before. I realized how much of my life I'd been giving away to someone who didn't deserve it. Now I was rebuilding, piece by piece, and taking back the control I thought I'd lost forever. I handed over the keys to her apartment, making sure she had everything. She needed to start fresh somewhere else. I filed the necessary papers to officially end everything: the divorce, the legal mess, the emotional baggage. I didn't want her to have any hold over me anymore. She was out of my life, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of peace. What struck me most during this process was how much I had underestimated my own strength. I'd always been the guy who believed in loyalty, in honesty, but betrayal forces you to question everything. It makes you realize how fragile trust really is, and how vital it is to guard your heart. I learned to spot red flags faster, to listen to that little voice warning me when something's off. Looking back, I wish I had seen the signs earlier, but I also forgive myself for being naive. Everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes cost you everything. But I also learned that revenge isn't about punishing others. It's about reclaiming your dignity and moving forward. I took control of the narrative. I exposed the lies, walked away, and refused to let her ruin my future. Today, I focus on myself. I've started dating again cautiously. I've learned not to jump into something stupid just to fill the void, but to trust my instincts. I still feel pain, sure, but I also feel freedom. Freedom from the lies, from the betrayal, from the person I thought I knew. I can finally breathe again. My advice to anyone going through something similar: don't let anyone make you feel small or unworthy. Trust your gut, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to walk away from toxic people. It's going to hurt at first, but it gets better. And sometimes the only way to truly heal is to take a long seat in the aftermath, look back at the wreckage, and decide what kind of future you want, one built on truth or one built on lies. Finally, always remember, revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about reclaiming your power. The moment you stop letting someone control your happiness, you've already won. I lost a lot, but I gained myself back. That was the real victory. And that's the story of how I turned betrayal into my breakthrough.